Okay, it started.
Look at that guy. He's got a very nice unibrow.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. Imagine if you had hair going down your nose. All right, let's start with a prayer. Father in heaven, thank you so much for your word. Thank you for the school that we can come to, where we can be together, and where we can have a common focus and a common goal. We recognize that this is something that really is a privilege for us, and that many people wish they could have something like this. So we pray that you'll help us to treasure this opportunity. We ask this now in your Son Jesus' name. Amen. So, we are talking about the beast of the sea still, right now, beast of the sea, and we were looking at the fulfillment of the 42 months. So, what was the 42 months all about? It was how long the beast of the sea would
Have power.
Yes, that's right. So it would have power for 42 months. Okay, now that's helpful because it wasn't just going to do anything for 42 months, like it wasn't going to do whatever. It was specifically having power for 42 months. Now, what we saw yesterday was that there's a whole bunch of periods of 1260 years that work with the Catholic Church. So, for instance, in 529, Justinian made his decree. 1260 years later, the Pope lost a ton of power in France. This is what you see. The Catholic Church is exalted, then 1260 years later, it's cut down. So here's another exaltation. Ready? Here's this guy. We've talked about him before. His name is Phocas. Phocas with a PH. Okay, Decree of Phocas. It was in AD 610. This is what he said. Pope Boniface IV sought and received from Phocas a decree acknowledging that the see of blessed Peter the Apostle should be the head of all the churches, and that the title of universal bishop should be reserved exclusively for the Bishop of Rome. Remember, they were all like fighting over it, all the different bishops. Bishop of Constantinople said, well, you know, Constantinople is the capital, so we should be able to be a pretty important bishop too. Finally, the emperor says, no, Rome is. 610. Okay, add 1260 years, what do you get? That was for Justinian. So what do you get on this one? 610. 1870. Do you know what happened in 1870? Probably not. But if you do, that's impressive. Okay, 1870 was not when I was born. It was not when my grandfather was born. It was before that. Here's what happened. 1870, you have this guy. Do you know? 1870, they lose the Papal States. Look at the flag that's behind him. He's Italian, that's right. And he had a cool sword. His name, check this out, ready? Garibaldi. Isn't that an awesome name? Garibaldi. Okay, here's what Garibaldi did. Garibaldi said, we are creating Italy. We're done with the Pope having, because before the Pope ruled over Italy, it was actually his sovereign territory. So the Pope made the laws. He said everything that happened in Italy. He was the king, the actual king of Italy. Well, in 1870, that all stopped. In early 1860-ish, Garibaldi started a revolt. He said, we're taking over Italy. We're starting our own country. Italians. And so then they went along and they did it, and they were able to take over the Pope's territory. So here's what happens. Garibaldi finally surrounds Rome with his troops, and the Pope basically becomes a prisoner in his own palace. Garibaldi kicks the French troops out, because the French came to defend the Pope, because a number of them were still Catholic. He kicks them out, and he imprisons the Pope in the Quirinal. That would be the palace. The French were forced to recall their troops from Rome. Italian troops soon took the city, despite opposition mounted by the Pope's own troops. In an election in October 1870, Rome at last became part of a unified kingdom of Italy. And so that's what Garibaldi did in 1870. So here's the picture of how it all takes place. Garibaldi comes in, he takes all these different places, and he finally takes this last one, Rome, in 1870. Exactly 1260 years after the Decree of Phocas. And this is what's just crazy. The Pope is exalted, exactly 1260 years later, cut down. And it's crazy to see this happening. And in fact, it's believed, I think his name was Joseph Mead, it's believed that one man, he wasn't a brother because he came around in the 1400s, so before the Christadelphians were around. But one man studying Revelation looked at it and actually predicted the French Revolution. like to like almost the exact year. Isn't that crazy? He was able to say, he said, like, there's going to be a huge thing that happens to the Catholic Church in 1789. In the 1400s, he did that. So, anyway, kind of interesting. So, people were able to see these periods. Now, obviously, the Catholic Church is still around, right? So what we're looking for is a final fulfillment, then, of these things. We're looking for a time when there actually is a full 1260-year period when the end of it is the destruction of the Catholic Church. Okay? So we've had little, like, teasers with Justinian to the French Revolution, Focus to Garibaldi. But it's never happened fully. Okay. Daniel 7 talks to us about this kind of same thing. This kind of deal. We don't need to see that. All right. This is what I wanted to say. It's not on there. Okay. Have you guys ever heard Uncle Jim Cowie talk about 2060? He always says, by 2060 the papacy will be destroyed, and all of that. And you may have just thought that it was some kind of random date. But it's not, actually. So we're looking for a third fulfillment of this 1260 years. Eventually, there's going to be one in which this beast is totally done. Okay, well, there was a final exalting of the Catholic Church, and that's when we're going to start looking at the beast of the earth. There was a final exalting of the Catholic Church, and it happened in AD 800 on Christmas Day. Someone was crowned. Do you remember? Charlemagne. AD 800, Charlemagne was crowned. Now, you add 1260 years to that. By the way, Charlemagne's crowning was a big deal for the Pope, right? Because he finally is demonstrating, I have the power over the emperor, because he puts the crown on the guy's head. And in fact, Charlemagne, afterward, was like, why did I let him do that? And he was all mad. Because he realized what it meant. And so, do you know who didn't let the Pope put the crown on his head? Napoleon. Right? Pope was about to crown Napoleon to show, I am more powerful than you. Napoleon takes it and says, give that thing to me. Puts it on his own head. Right? That's how it goes. So Napoleon wasn't going to be taken over by the Pope. He arrested the Pope, then he took the crown. So we have AD 800. That's, again, the Pope was exalted because he crowned Charlemagne. AD 800 plus 1260 gives you 2060. And so the thought is that the papacy will be destroyed by that time, by 2060. Now, we can't be sure, again, but I think that makes sense. You know, that's one of the next big times where the Pope is given a lot of power. And so for that to last 1260 years makes a lot of sense to me. Okay, so the Beast of the Sea kind of shifts focus between the Western Empire and the papacy, because they very much were the same thing. There wasn't a separation of church and state back then. So I want to bring that out just in case we get confused. It kind of shifts focus, and it's just basically looking at the West and the papacy at the same time, because there wasn't really a difference. Okay. Just one final thing. What have you heard before about the Catholic Church and the Bible?
Nothing.
Nothing. That was a funny answer. Okay. Yeah, it hasn't gone too good with them. Just take a look. Let's look at Revelation 13. Let's read verses 7 through 9. And look at what it says here. Revelation 13, verses 7 through 9. Noah, why don't you read this for us, please?
And it was given unto him to make war with the saints, and to overcome them. And power was given to him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life, of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. If any man have an ear, let him hear.
So he makes war with the saints. Now, I think that's a really key thing to notice. And in fact, if you go to Revelation 17, he's still warring against the saints even when Jesus comes. And I think that's a big key, because today we can just kind of be like, oh, the Catholic Church, you know, they're nice, whatever, they go help people. And it's true, they do. But there's still a war. They're warring on our minds. And I think that's a big key thing to notice. Here's just some things that the Catholic Church did to people who wanted to read the Bible. This is from the Council of Tarragona in 1234. Here's what they said. No one may possess the books of the Old and New Testaments in the Romance language, which was the vernacular. That was what they read at the time. And if anyone possesses that item, he must turn them over to the local bishop within 8 days after the promulgations of this decree, so that they may be burned, lest, be he a cleric or a layman, he be suspected until he is cleared of all suspicion. They said, you can't hold the Bible. If you do, just give it to your local bishop so that he can burn them. Right? Crazy! Like, that's the kind of stuff that they did there. This is interesting. This is from a book called God's Bestseller. If you get the chance to read it, it's very, very intriguing. It's about the Bible being translated into English. It says, Tyndale was thus a heretic and a traitor because he translated the Bible into English. And to More, that's Thomas More, the burning of heretics was lawful, necessary, and well done. Faint hearts might say that it was wrong to send heretics to the stake because Christ had told Peter to put up thy sword. But More reminded them that St. Augustine and other fathers of the church had agreed that Christian princes had been constrained to punish heretics by terrible death. It was wrong to make a covenant with the heretics. They must be punished by death in the fire. Scary. That was Thomas More. That's what happened to William Tyndale, the one who translated the Bible. Now, I wanted to show you this because I find this to be very, very interesting. Because that was a long time ago, right? You know, that was 500 years ago that happened to William Tyndale. But the church is not done with persecution, although now it's much more subtle. I want to show you, let's see, Man of Sin. I want to show you something that just blows me away. I think it's in this one. Let me check. So the church still, now like they allow people to read the Bible. So the Catholic Church still allows people to read the Bible. And yet they twist a bunch of things. So look at this. Do you like that? Isn't that a cool picture? Okay, so check this out. The church twists different doctrines and different scriptures in order, they have blatantly done it in order to fit with their own doctrine. So let me show you what I mean by this. Okay, bruising the head of the serpent, right? Genesis 3:15. Okay, let's all go there. Let's take a look at what Genesis 3:15 says. So these are just some things where the church is still warring against the saints. So Genesis 3:15, we have it right up here. It says, "And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, thou shalt bruise his heel." Okay, who was supposed to do the bruising? Christ would bruise the serpent. Okay, and then the serpent would bruise his heel, right? This is like our, you talked about this your whole life. Okay, so we got that there. He shall bruise thy heel, right? Well, this is what the Douay-Rheims version says. The Douay-Rheims version, by the way, is the Catholic version of the Bible. They've come out recently with an American Standard Translation. The New American Bible. The New American Bible. But the DV is their old one. Do you notice the difference? Lion weight. Okay, what's the difference in some pronouns there? Do you notice she and her? What's up with that? Right? I thought this was talking about Christ. Well, that's interesting. What do you know about Mary in Catholicism? Yeah, Mary is like loved, right? You pray to Mary, you bow down to Mary, you do all kinds of things. Mary is like the one. Well, what's really weird is that in a number of places, Mary has actually replaced Jesus. She's a mediatrix. That's what they call her. So, you know how Jesus is supposed to be our mediator? Mary is the mediatrix. So, because Jesus is so great, remember, he's God. Because Jesus is so great, they need to have a mediator to bring you to Jesus. And so then that's Mary. So you pray your rosary, Hail Mary, Mother of God. How's it go?
The Hail Mary, Mother of the Lord, was with the Blessed Art
Yes.
Thou amongst women. I grew up with a Catholic grandmother.
Hey, Mom.
I could say the whole rosary.
But hey,
Did you see how that happened?
So,
Great.
well, no, that's good. You don't remember it anymore. That's nice.
No, I do.
Oh, you do? Oh, I see.
Rosary.
Whoa, oh, that's what you just said.
Hail
Wow.
Mary, Mother of God. No, Hail
That's
Mary,
crazy. Yeah, it's pretty crazy, the stuff that they've done. But they've essentially replaced Christ with Mary. And the more you start to look into it, the weirder it gets, because all of a sudden you see that, like, the foundational verse in Scripture, right? This is the gospel, that Jesus is going to come and crush the serpent. Suddenly, Jesus isn't there anymore. And it says, she shall crush thy head. Now, Catholics have very much taken to that verse because they have statues everywhere of Mary crushing the serpent. And even if you just go to these the missions around here, you'll see them in, like, their little pictures and everything. So that's in England. You might not be able to tell what's there. I'll show you. There, do you see it now? There's the serpent eating an apple.
Wait, did you go there?
No, I didn't go there. Okay, there's one. Let's see if we have some more pictures. Here's another. Mary standing on the serpent.
What's up with the apple?
Mary on the serpent.
Why does it have the apple at the throat?
Here we go.
Oh, a Pegasus thing.
Why are they all watching?
Oh, it looks like a dragon.
Here it is again. It's a serpent. I know, that's scary ears, doesn't it? So they're, like, everywhere. It's pretty nuts. If you just search for, like, Mary crushing the serpent, there are a ton. So they've totally taken that out, like, totally messed up this verse. And the crazy thing is, they heartily endorse the lie, even though they know that's not what the Hebrew says. Ready? Look at this. This is from a magazine called This Rock. It is a Catholic magazine. And this is what the writer says. Now, he was like a friar or a bishop or something. I forgot. But this is what he said. He says, though the variant that uses she and her probably came from a copyist error, right? So he admits this is wrong, right? Though it probably came from a copyist error, the idea it expresses is true. There is a sense in which Mary crushed the serpent's head, and in which she was struck at by the serpent. She didn't do these things directly, but indirectly through her Son. It was Jesus who directly crushed the serpent's head from the cross, and Jesus whom the serpent directly struck on the cross. Yet Mary cooperated in these events. She, not anyone else, was the person who agreed to become the human channel through which Christ would enter the world in order to crush the serpent's head. She herself was wounded when the serpent struck Jesus. And so he comes along and he says, even though we know this is totally wrong, it's actually right. Like, isn't that crazy? And so this is what the church is doing. And it's warring on people's minds. It's not a real physical persecution anymore, but it's fighting against the saints, putting in this kind of crazy stuff. Here's another example. 10 Commandments, right? We're familiar with these. Have you ever heard of the Catholic 10 Commandments?
Oh, goodness, show me.
These are pretty funny. Okay, all right. This is generally what we say are the 10 Commandments. They come from Exodus chapter 20, if you want to look them up. We have, you shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make thee any graven image. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Honor your father and your mother. You shall not kill. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against thy neighbor. You shall not covet.
Good thing Mr. Jan isn't here.
So these are pretty good, right? This is our 10 Commandments. Well, the Catholic 10 Commandments are a little bit different. Go through and look at them and see if you can find what's different about them.
Why is God's?
Yeah, that is different. I think that's just from the site that I got them off of. I think I got those from the Vatican website, I believe. Do you guys see any difference?
Holy the Lord's Day.
Yeah, that's just different wording. So remember the Sabbath day, keep it holy. It's a similar kind of thing.
Well, they're not in order.
Yeah, they're not in order because it's skipping one.
Sabbath day, graven image.
Yeah. Did you notice number 2? It doesn't have that. And they've taken you shall not covet and they've turned it into 2. Do not covet your neighbor's wife. Do not covet your neighbor's goods.
Wait, hold on.
Cover your neighbors.
Wait, why do you think they do that? Why would they take out number 2? Because they have them everywhere, right? So they have, in Exodus chapter 20, they have the 10 Commandments, and you shall not make any graven image is obviously there, right? And it is not in theirs. It's taken out, and the last one, you shall not covet, is suddenly they come up with this, do not covet your neighbor's wife or your neighbor's goods, which the Bible does not say that. So you can see, again, it's the same kind of thing. They've taken what is true, and they've twisted it to work for what they want. So, you shall not make thee any graven image. Well, that doesn't really work. We like to go kiss Mary's feet. So, we're going to have things like that. So they got rid of those. Okay, since it didn't fit with their beliefs, they just ignored them. And that's kind of how it went. Okay, so interesting things to look at. But I think it's important because the church continues to do this. And they continue to just twist things, and they sound right. If you would have read their version of the Ten Commandments, you would have been like, oh yeah, that's right. If you hadn't really been looking at it, you would have just thought, yeah, that makes sense. That works. That fits. If you had just quickly read through that verse about she shall bruise thy head, you might not notice it. And this is what the church is doing. It subtly tries to get into our minds and to affect how we think and to change it. And you'll see that when you see things like Christian books coming into the ecclesia. Brothers standing up and giving classes based off of this Christian book they found at some bookstore. And you hear weird stuff when that happens. And it's scary. Anyway, all right. Beast of the earth. So that was our beast of the sea. That was the Western Empire and the papacy kind of together, working together. It's going to change as we start to look at the beast of the earth. Let's just read through that section, and then I think we'll stop for lunch. Revelation 13, verses 11 to 18. This one's cool. I'm excited to talk about the beast of the earth because it's one that when you hear Revelation classes, a lot of times you hear about the seven-headed beast and all that kind of thing, but you don't hear about the beast of the earth very often. So this is the one that gets cool. We're going to see the 666 come out. We're going to see the mark on the forehead and on the hand, that kind of stuff. So let's look at it. Kaylin, if you can start, we'll just read one verse each, then Mia and Jamin.
And there beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon.
And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed.
He did great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men.
And by the signs that it is allowed to work, the presence of the beast, it deceives those who dwell on the earth, telling them to make an image for the beast that, wounded by the sword, yet lived.
He was granted power to give the breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast that to be killed.
And he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive the mark in the right hand or in their forehead.
And that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name.
Here is wisdom. Let them that have understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of man. And his number is 666.
666. So that, I'm really pumped to get to that part. That'll just blow your mind. It's pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. 666. All right. Let's go ahead and we will close the prayer. Lord God, our Father, thank you for your truth. Thank you for your love towards us. We ask that we can learn to reflect that love, that compassion, and that mercy on the people whom we know, that we can show your character, and that we can learn to work with everyone around us in unity. We thank you for giving us time to look at your word. We thank you for the food that you've given to us. And it's our prayer that the food will strengthen us, that it will help sustain us as we try and serve you today. We ask for your Son to come soon. We pray this in his name. Amen. All right, so don't forget, bring your workbooks tomorrow, and we will start that.